Good day and welcome to a place called Through Inspirational Moments with Pat. We're broadcasting live from WYTV7, Community Broadcasters Network. Let me just tell you about a place called Through. This is a place where everybody can go to, has been, or you may be even going there. You may be going through something, but it is our mission to encourage you, to inspire, so that we can help each other. And we do this globally. But you know what? The only way that we do this is through those charitable donations. So if you've already given, we want to give you a heartfelt thank you. But we ask that you continue to give so that we can continue to do what we do, helping each other, as we stated, globally. I am the host of A Place Called Through, and my name is Patricia Wade Goings. I am an evangelist. I am your life, health, and wellness coach. And I am one of the broadcasters that really, really cares about you. So I want you to know, because I care, I hope you'll care about us with these inspirational moments and continue to support us. Today, we welcome here at A Place Called Through our guest, Ms. Dawn Brown. She is an advocate of mental health and mental illnesses. She is an international speaker and a motivational. She also heads up, and she is the CEO of a program that she will continue to tell you about as we move further into the interview. So I just want to take this time to welcome Ms. Brown to A Place Called Through.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
We thank you for taking the time out to join us today as we go into our story, talking today about mental health, mental illnesses, as it is something that affects us globally. Mental illnesses and mental health is not just a stationary thing. It is a global matter that we must now really raise the roof on this. People have to join in on this mission so that we can find the help. Join in and let's get these resources in place to help those that are affected. And as I said, it's not just one station of the world, it's everywhere that has been affected. Even more so now because of COVID-19, we are seeing an increase, and because of the mental illness, that affects us in other ways: cardiovascular problems, alcohol, substance abuse, domestic violence on the rise. And it's a national concern. So Ms. Brown, we want to talk to you today about mental illness and give us some background about mental illness and how it is impacting the people and the places that you are involved with.
Well, I think that, I think several things. One is that we know that 1 in 5 people experiences a mental illness in a given year. And I think the pandemic has changed that number to 1 in 4. So that's a lot of individuals in a given year that's going to experience some challenges. And I think sometimes, especially in different communities, we don't always think about it as a mental health challenge. We might just not understand and think, oh, I can't sleep. I'm just up all night, or I'm irritable. I'm not sure why, or, I'm having these strange thoughts, and I think it's just stress. And I think there are stressors do kind of lend themselves to exacerbating different conditions. But I am finding that more and more individuals are really in need of support. I think that the pandemic has allowed us to talk more freely about mental health challenges, about wellness. What does wellness mean? What does it look like? What does it look like in different communities? And allow us to be able to start thinking about ways to support families and individuals. I think workplaces are becoming more mental health friendly. Church communities are adopting a more mental health friendly approach. And I think it's just needed right now during the pandemic. There's just been a lot of trauma. There's been a lot of loss. And there's been a lot of, and loss not just of human life, but loss of freedom, loss of routine, loss of, common experiences. And so that also is impacting people's mental health.
And then I know that when you were giving the numbers, one thing that, of course, everybody Googles a lot of things and we find out some things and sometimes they may be a little off. But the facts that I found that, and I need to read this for our listeners and our viewers, that I came across this that says 1 in 5 U.S. adults experience mental illness each year. Mm-hmm. 1 in 20 U.S. adults experience serious mental illness each year. 1 in 6 U.S. youth aged 6 through 17 experience a mental health disorder each year. Mm-hmm. 50% of all lifetime mental illness begins at age 14, and 75% of that by age 24. It also noted in my study that suicide is the second leading cause of death among people aged 10 through 34. 21% of US adults experienced mental illness in 2020. That equates out to 52.9 million people. This represents 1 in 5 adults, and 5.6% of US adults experienced serious mental illness in 2020, which is 14.2 million people. This representing, again, 1 in 2 adults. Very alarming. The numbers are rising. They're continuing to rise with mental illnesses and mental health. So we know that, okay, we all relate to COVID-19, but COVID-19 has not caused every single thing. Mental illness has been, in full gear prior to it, but we would say that it has really been more engaged because of COVID-19. So, when we look at the stats back then and what's going on now, yes, it is escalated because people, they've lost their jobs, unable to go to schools are opening and constant closing. The children now are having to wear masks like everyone else. And, it's because of the young age. I mean, kids want to be kids. They're not used to having to do this. So yes, things are constantly changing in mental health. The help that's out there for people that, are suffering with mental illness. Is it not true that, there's a lack of the resources and the help that's available to help people get through these situations? Because the helpers are affected by COVID-19 themselves.
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's just, if you look at schools don't even have enough mental health counselors to be able to serve the students in need. So yes, I think that when we look at the resources that are available, we do need to have more mental health clinical providers that are available to the people that need them. And I think to have them that are culturally responsive. I think that's the other piece too, is that, we need to find mental health providers that reflect the community, because there are some challenges that people are experiencing. So everything that you said, I think, when you talk about COVID, yes, there were there were challenges. People were having mental health experiences and in mental health crisis prior to the pandemic. It has been exacerbated, during the pandemic. I think that there has been an elevation of individuals who maybe weren't aware that they might be experiencing a mental health challenge, and that has been brought to their attention based on a lot of the circumstances. Because as we know, when people experience a mental health crisis, we know that it's either situational or it can even be biological, right? So it's a brain disorder that we know, and that sometimes situations create the stressors that lead to people struggling with their mental health. Others, it's a chemical imbalance.
Well, let's kind of shift the gears, if you will, for a little bit, because I know that we're going a little bit further than I wanted to go. But talk to us about how you got involved with trying to be, not trying to be, because you are this advocate helping people, with mental illnesses. What brought you to this point?
Wow, great question. So I have a daughter that has a mental health challenge. And I think trying to understand how to support her was really what brought me to this space. I was working in Oakland. I was managing schools, serving after school programs. And I realized that, there's a lot of challenges that we see with our young people, that they come to school and they have a lot of things going on. And I think when my daughter, as I was balancing kind of early childhood education and the things that we do to help prepare parents to successfully support their children, I also realized that my daughter was experiencing some challenges as well. And I didn't know what those were. Just like any other parent, I was like, is it this? Is it that? I went to our pastor. Our pastor wasn't really aware. So, we got some holy oil and prayer and we implement all of that. I believe in prayer. No doubt it works, but it doesn't cure mental health challenges, which I didn't know she had at the time. So, by the time my daughter got diagnosed, I really believe that her diagnosis was a short-term challenge. I really thought that, and I told her that I said, listen, we have 3 months. And in 3 months, I think read these books, do these things. I'm gonna take these classes, attend these seminars, learn as much as I can. And after 3 months, I realized that it was a longer journey. And the reality is I had gone to inpatient. She was inpatient, and I'd gone to visit her. And I think one of the things that was really challenging is there was a gentleman who was in front of me whose father had a diagnosis. And I think that's when the light went off for me, because they thought his father was on the younger boys unit instead of the men unit. And he said, as I was getting off the elevator, he said, oh my gosh, you guys do this all the time. You would think that you would figure out that my 88-year-old father with a mental illness would be on the men's unit. And I think in that moment, I thought, 88. And I said that really loud, so loud that he turned around to look at me. And I think it was in that moment that I thought, no one told me that this would last longer than 3 months. I literally thought it was a very short-term situation. She was experiencing some challenges. We'd get through it. We'd move on. And I think that's when I started to really think about, how do I educate other families so that we just understand that it's a longer journey.
And it's amazing that you got to that point that you were, you wanted to dive in and find out, okay, what do I do? How do I do it? And with whom do I do it? And when you see other people with these situations, you say, oh, why me? Right. But then when you get to that why me point, you got to find the solution. So you dug right into trying to find the resources. In a lot of the local areas, in rural areas, if you will, limited resources are generally the situations. I recently spoke to another lady, who has a child that, battling autism. And that was one of the concerns that came out in the conversation about being in a rural area and could not find the resources. Her child was placed in this school and that school. And it was like she just got tossed around in the system, and she's struggling now, even though her child is an adult, to even just find the transportation to help her get back and forth to, I would say rehabilitation, voc rehab. So, it is a struggle, not just in the sense as, a mother and the person who is dealing with it, but it is a struggle overall. So that's why I say we have to rise above this situation and get everybody involved in it. So, we got to do better by what we're doing, folks out there. So if you're listening and you're tuning into these inspirational moments, again, I am Pat Goington. I am the host of A Place Called Through, and we're broadcasting from WYTV7 Community Network. And we're talking to Ms. Dawn Brown, who is an advocate for mental health. And, we want you to get involved. Join in this conversation with us. Take action. Take the very next step. Let's do something about it so that we can help each other. As we said from the beginning, we do this globally, and we want to continue doing this, so that we've got to jump right on in. We want you to stay tuned. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we'll be right back with Ms. Dawn Brown as we continue our conversation here today about mental illness and mental health, what we can do to help. We'll be right back right after this commercial break.
Mr. Happy Living here. I love good things made for good people. That's why I love Happy Living's online e-course. It's an 8-week-long deep dive into you and the inspired life you want to live. The life you were put here on this earth to live. The one that you and only you can live. 8 weeks of lectures and ideas and topics and supporting materials and powerful self-improvement tools. All designed for you. All designed to help you create the tools and the power and the confidence you need to discover your purpose and to discover the life you were meant to live, and to feel incredibly inspired and motivated to decide you will live your life to its fullest. It's all designed to help you create the unique and distinct philosophy of you and your inspired life. Go to happyliving.com, select our e-course, and save $100 with promo code WYTV7. And for every enrollment, I'll donate another $100 to WYTV7. For $300 and about 30 hours, I promise you'll never, ever be the same again.
Hi there, and welcome back to A Place Called Through. We're broadcasting from WYTV7, Community Broadcasters Network. And today our guest is Miss Dawn Brown. And we're talking to Miss Brown today. She is an advocate of mental health, and we're talking about conversations today about what can we do as a nation to help each other as we get through this thing of mental illness. It's not a one state, it's not a one county, it's all of us together. We can't just blame it on COVID. Mental illness and mental health has always been a challenge. It's been here before COVID, as have many other things. But we want to talk about what it is that we can do. How can we help resolve this? You know, mental health, particularly in those rural areas and counties that are limited with resources, we have to raise the standards for this. We've got to fight this battle together. And that's what we do here on A Place Called Through. Our mission is to encourage, inspire, and we do it globally so that we can come together as a nation and help one another. Ms. Brown, you know, we welcome you back to This Place Called Through, and we're going to continue, as you were stating, you know, your daughter was diagnosed with mental illness, and, you know, you went through some hurdles there because it was unbeknown to you that, you know, there was something wrong here. And it is my understanding that a lot of times the symptoms, or if you will, things that would indicate that they're, you know, okay, we got a serious problem here, they're not already, you know, they're not already picked up very early. Sometimes they linger until later ages, and you don't really know until it really happens. Am I not correct on that?
So yes, I think education is key. And we don't always know what the signs and symptoms are. And I think that was a challenge. So when my daughter was not doing well, I thought it was just normal teenage angst, normal teenage rebellion. There was behavior that she exhibited that I figured was indicative of something else. I didn't even think about mental illness. It wasn't on my radar at the time. And we don't talk about it. So in our family, although there are individuals in our family who have a mental illness, a diagnosis, no one shared that. So it wasn't that I could see these symptoms and go, oh, you know, it could be this, or it could be that. It just wasn't anything that came up. And, you know, one of the things as my daughter and I have kind of navigated this journey is I've always tell her that I believe that her superpower is her mental illness. It is her gift. And it may not feel like a gifting at first. I feel like oftentimes, you know, mental illness is like when we see Spider-Man, when he's first trying to use his web and he's like floundering, he's trying to stick on the building and he keeps falling down. I feel like it's like that. And I think what happens is that when you have even these characters, right, these heroes in these Marvel movies, they're awkward at first. They're trying to figure out how to adjust their life to this newfound gift, this talent. And I feel the same thing with mental illness. I feel like people who are gifted see the world differently. And they in turn get to talk and touch and impact people that I may not be able to talk, touch, or impact. And I say that to my daughter all the time, that my role as a parent is to redefine what normal looks like, is to redefine. We do it for autism. We do it when people they come back and they are injured, right? So we start to make, you know, if they come back from war and you know, we have wounded warriors and other programs that help us to redefine what it means to be different, redefine what it means to include someone in our space, our family, our community. The other day, I was watching a show that had this organization called Disabled But Not Really, about this young man who was shot, I think in Kansas City, and he started a foundation. And it's so beautiful what he's doing. and helping people understand that you can be disabled, maybe not really, it's how you see yourself. So I've always, and I love that about what he's doing, because I've always tried to teach that to my daughter. You might experience the world differently, and that's okay. That's your gifting. And so use that as your superpower. Use that to touch humankind, because you have that gift for a reason. And, people who have mental illness, they're lawyers and doctors and therapists and psychologists and professors. Life isn't over, because you have a mental illness. It just means that you might have to care for yourself differently, like with diabetes. Mental illness, mental health is physical health. So whether you have diabetes, or you have, high blood pressure, or you have a heart condition, or you break your arm, you're going to kind of move through the world differently. And the same thing when you have a diagnosis.
Absolutely. And like you said, it's not the end for you. People have moved on and are very successful.
Extremely.
It's how you see it and what you do with it, because it is affecting you. So you got to have that determination and that drive to say, okay, we can do this. We're going to make, we're going to make some progress here with ourselves. But I want to share this fact that I found also, where it says 16.5% of U.S. youth aged 6 through 17 experienced a mental health disorder. And that was back in 2016, which was 7.7 million people. High school students with significant symptoms of depression are more likely than twice as likely to drop out of school compared to their peers. It also stated that students aged 6 through 17 with mental, emotional, or behavioral concerns are 3 times more likely to repeat a grade. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among people, again, aged 10 through 34 in the US. 70% of the youth in the juvenile justice system have a diagnosis of mental health conditions. I mean, these are really, alarming, because of the fact it affects not only just in the physical sense, but it's affecting even going to school. Because if they're really not getting the help that they need, even in the school, and we stated this earlier, limited resources. And a lot of times, people are just not knowing how to deal with situations. And this, from the statistics, is clearly stating here, if these kids are dropping out of school, there is a reason, okay? Because it states here the depression is so high. So what can we do? How do we help solve this problem?
I think that it's really, really important that we really focus on education. So part of what we do at Leaders is that we focus on educating educators and pastors and faith leaders on how do you create inclusive spaces? How do you create spaces that support people who are different, people who walk through the world with a different vibration? How do you do that? And the same thing with NAMI. NAMI has a wonderful program called Sharing Hope. And I consult with them on just implementing that program within their pilot states, which is talking about how do we talk about wellness? How do we talk about wellness within the Black community? How do we talk about mental health and wellness in the Black community? What does that look like? What are the words that we use as a community to define our own experience? And then how do we get connected to the resources? Because oftentimes, whether you have a child with a mental health condition, a mental health challenge, whether you have a child with autism, whether you have a child who, is deaf and hard of hearing, it requires adjustment as a parent. It just does. So how do we get in communities with people who teach us how to advocate both for ourselves and for our children? So I think that's really where our empowerment comes from. It's when we know what to do, we feel more empowered to do that. It's when we don't know exactly what we can do that we feel, like we're flailing, and it's sometimes failing. And I think that's where sometimes the challenge is.
And then, also I was looking up, and, I do study a lot. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I came across, and not that everything on the internet is accurate, because it constantly changes. When it talked about the effects of mental health with the community, it noted that mental illness and substance abuse, use disorders are involved in 1 of every 8 emergency room incidents. And they're saying that's an estimate of 12 million visits. Across the U.S. economy, serious mental illness causes $193.2 billion in lost earnings each year.
Absolutely.
And it's saying depression and anxiety costs the global economy $1 trillion in lost productivity each year.
So those are true. Yes, I like that you have those facts, but I think that there's stories behind those facts and statistics too, right? It's how do you create a mental health friendly, stigma-free work environment so that a person who's challenged with caring for a spouse or a loved one who has a mental health condition can say that, and we can make accommodations, right? In some companies, if an individual is experiencing some mental health condition, they can request to work from home. Or if you are unable to, a person is unable to really work in a setting among a lot of people, or the environment is stressful, maybe they could work in the back. There's a school where if you work in the lunchroom, maybe you work getting the lunch prepared as opposed to serving the children. And so I think yes, those are statistics. But if we think about the education on the flip side, so as an employer, as a person who works with other, employers, it's so vital for us to understand how to support the workforce, how to support individuals. You have companies like Adobe that are having mental health days, that are creating once a month they have their affinity groups do like a cooking experience. So companies are really very much, I think, focused on how do we start to create these spaces. And it came up during the pandemic. So the pandemic, although it's had some serious impact, it's also kind of redefined the way that we might engage our workforce, and the way that we might begin to look at educating educating families and individuals as well.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because one of the things that, we had talked about before was some of the stressors, even though, okay, we have to frequently, teach our kids at home because schools are closed. Okay, people have lost jobs because businesses have closed down.
That's right.
So now they're forced to be home, but yet we still have to have this way in which we can educate them so that, we can help each other here. So, with businesses looking the way they look right now, so many of them closing down, I still go back to the same fact that there has to be an avenue, a better avenue that can help equip these people who are right at home. I mean, facing it, you have been there.
Absolutely.
We've got to find the resources to be able to help each other. And so my point would be today on a place called Through, with these inspirational moments, is that we got to join in this fight. If you're in a situation, get the help. Call the mental health local agencies, call your health departments, there's resources out there to help. But I mean, if you don't call for the help, nobody's just going to walk up to you and say, okay, here's the tag. Okay, we're going to go help you. So I say join in the fight, people. Let's fight together to do this. Unfortunately, the clock is ticking on us and we're about to run out of time. But before we do that, I want Ms. Brown to kind of give you those words of encouragement. If you're battling with, mental illness, and Ms. Brown, if you would tell us, briefly, like I said, we got about 2 more minutes left. Well, really 1.5, to tell our listeners and our viewers, if they needed to reach out to you through NAMI or any, your leadership program, how can they do so?
Well, first and foremost, I would really recommend people to search for their local NAMI affiliate. And so they can go to www.nami.org. And that, website can help guide you. There are also other resources that I know we're running out of time. So other resources that I'm happy to share with individuals if they want to. They can email me directly at Dawn or D Brown at leaderstomorrow.org. So that's D Brown at leaderstomorrow.org. And I'm happy to connect them to resources that, or help, in some cases, just with advocacy. That's what we do. We focus on helping people to understand what are things that they can do.
And that's awesome. You heard it here today. And we want to thank you, Ms. Brown. Looks like the clock has let us know we're almost out of time. But I want to certainly thank you for being our guest today on A Place Called Through. And we invite you to come back again and let's talk some more about mental health because it's growing. It's, there's people still dealing with it and may not know how to. But again, you've heard it here on a place called Through Inspirational Moments with Pat. I've been your host today, Patricia Wade Goings, and we broadcast from WYTV7 Community Broadcasters Network. Hey, if you have an inspirational story and you like what you heard so far today and maybe, in the past, and you want to be a guest and share your story and your testimony, please reach me in area code of 843-608-9744 or send me that email at pgoingswp@gmail.com. And please be sure to visit the website at www.willpowerthecalltoriseabove.org. Follow me on Facebook, a place called Through at Willpower, the call to rise above. Hey, if you need help, I am a coach. I'm a life coach. I am a mental health coach. I am an evangelist. I'll pray with you. We'll talk to you. Again, I am Patricia Wellens. Thank you for being our guest. Hey, my listeners and viewers, reach out to me. Blessings and love.